The
This
auction
is for
house
you.
fell
Take
silent
it.
when they
No,
dragged her
I
onto
don't
the
want your
platform.
money.
Please, it will
Garrett
help. This
Brennan
is for
had
you.
been to
Take
100 of
it.
these gray
No,
market
I don't
sales
want your
across the
money.
fringe,
Please, it will
looking
help.
for salvage parts and cheap labor contracts for his repair shop. He had never seen a Volanthe before, not in person. Their kind did not end up in places like this. Their kind ruled entire star systems. But there she was, tall, impossibly so. Her skin caught the harsh overhead lights like polished obsidian, smooth and dark and flawless, except for the markings. Silver scars traced her cheekbones in patterns too deliberate to be accidental, like frozen lightning captured beneath the surface. They ran down her neck, disappearing beneath the torn fabric of what had once been fine clothing. Her wrists were bound in suppression cuffs, the kind that blocked neural implants and psionic resonance, the kind that cost more than most ships. Her eyes, twin pools of molten amber, stared at nothing. Not defeated, empty. Garrett had seen that look before, in the mirror. In the years after Eliza died and the universe kept spinning, like her death meant nothing at all. Lot 47. The auctioneer announced his voice board as if he were selling scrap metal instead of a living being. Volanthe female, no documentation, no lineage verification, sold as is. Opening bid 10 credits. A murmur rippled through the crowd, gathered in the converted warehouse on Helios Station. 10 credits for a Volanthe was an insult so profound, it circled back to being a joke. These were the people who built ships that could fold space itself, who engineered crystal cities that sang in harmonic resonance, who had never lost a war in 3,000 years of recorded history. 10 credits. Garrett watched as a Drawback slaver raised his appendage, all 6 eyes glinting with cruel calculation. The type who ran the underground fighting pits on the outer colonies. The type who saw flesh as commodity and suffering as entertainment. 10 credits. The word came out of Garrett's mouth before his brain caught up. 12. The entire warehouse turned to look at him. The drawbacks rotated his bulk, all 6 eyes narrowing to slits. Human. His translator rendered the word with obvious disgust. You do not want this one. Damaged goods. No papers means no protection. Volanthe Empire comes looking, they will burn your ship and ask questions later. 12 credits, Garrett repeated. His voice was steady even though his hands were not. 12 credits was everything left in his account after last month's docking fees. 12 credits was 3 meals and a tank of fuel. 12 credits was the difference between leaving Helios Station tomorrow or next week. 12 credits was nothing. The auctioneer waited stylus hovering over his data pad. The drawbacks made a sound like grinding metal disgust probably and lowered his appendage. No one else bid. Why would they? A Volanthe without documentation was worthless. Worse than worthless. She was a political liability, a mystery that could bring imperial investigators down on anyone stupid enough to claim ownership. Sold to the human. 12 credits. Garrett walked to the platform through a silence that felt like judgment. He transferred the credits, nearly drained his account to 0, and received a simple biometric chip that registered temporary ownership. The guard shoved her forward. She stumbled, caught herself with a grace that seemed bone deep, and looked at him for the first time. Why, her voice was like wind through crystal caves, beautiful and cold and completely hollow. Garrett reached for the suppression cuffs. His hands were shaking now, but he kept them steady through sheer force of will. Because nobody should be sold for 10 credits, he said. I bought your freedom for 12. That is 3 more than you were worth to them. But we both know that is a lie. She stared at him. The cuffs clicked open and fell to the floor with a dull clang. Something flickered in those copper, bright eyes. Confusion, maybe. Or the first crack in whatever wall she had built to survive this. You expect nothing in return? I expect you to tell me your name eventually, when you are ready. He turned and walked toward the exit, not looking back. After a long moment, he heard her footsteps following. The ship was called the Eliza Dawn. It was a heap of welded-together salvage that somehow still flew, held together by Garrett's stubbornness and about 40 kilometers of replacement wire. He had been living in it for 3 years, running repair jobs across the fringe, staying one step ahead of debt collectors and memories. The hull was patchwork, 3 different metals visible where emergency repairs had never been properly finished. The engines coughed when they started and whined when they ran, and occasionally made sounds that no engine should make. But she flew. That was all that mattered. The woman who was not supposed to exist stood in the cargo bay taking in the cluttered mess of spare parts and half-finished projects and said nothing. Crew quarters are through there, Garrett pointed. It is just a cot and a privacy screen, but it is yours. Galley is to the left, shower to the right. Water recycler has been acting up, so keep it short. You give me a room. Her voice was flat, testing. On your ship, where you sleep. I sleep in the cockpit most nights anyway. He moved past her toward the workshop area, already cataloging the day's failures in his mind. His last coin's gone. Nothing to show for it except another mouth to feed and a political target painted on his hull. You are not afraid I will kill you. It was not a question. Garrett stopped, turned. Are you going to? She considered this with the same careful deliberation she seemed to apply to everything. I have not decided, fair enough. He moved to the galley, started pulling out ration packs. When you decide, let me know. I would like to finish dinner first. She watched him prepare 2 meals, protein paste and rehydrated vegetables. Nothing special, the kind of food that kept you alive without reminding you what living tasted like. He set one on the small table bolted to the floor. Sit, he said, eat. You look like you have not had a real meal in weeks. Valanthe do not require, everyone requires food. Sit, she sat. They ate in silence. Garrett did not push. He had learned in the years since Eliza died that some silences needed to exist, that sometimes people or beings that look like people needed space more than they needed words. He had learned that you could not fix everything, could not save everyone, but sometimes you could offer a meal and a place to sleep and let that be enough. When she finished, she set down the utensils with precise, deliberate movements. Sarah, she said. Garrett looked up. My name. It is Sarah, Garrett Brennan. He extended his hand in old human custom. She stared at it for a long moment, then reached out and touched her fingertips to his palm. Her skin was cool, smooth as glass. You are strange, Garrett Brennan, she said. So I have been told. The first week passed in careful silence. Sarah moved through the ship like a ghost, her bare feet making no sound on the metal grating. She did not ask questions, did not make demands. She ate when Garrett ate, slept, when the ship's lights dimmed to night cycle, and spent hours standing at the observation port in the cargo bay watching the stars drift past. Garrett worked. That was what he did, what he had always done. The Eliza Dawn needed constant maintenance, engines to tune, hull patches to reinforce, systems to coax back to life when they inevitably failed. It was easier to focus on broken things that could be fixed than on broken things that could not. On the third day, he was elbow deep in the water recycler when she appeared in the engineering bay. Silent as always. You were a soldier, she said. It was not a question. Garrett kept working. Colonial Defense Force. 12 years. Got out after he stopped. Tightened a coupling that did not need tightening. After your daughter. His hand stilled. Your ship speaks her name when it powers on, Sarah continued. The photograph in the cockpit. The way you look at the stars like you are searching for something you know you will never find. Her voice softened just slightly. I did not need files. Garrett pulled his hands out of the recycler, wiped them on his pants. She was 6. Colony transport got hit by raiders. I was not there. Could not save her. And so you save others instead. I fix things, he said. That is all. You fix broken things. Sarah moved closer, her bare feet silent on the metal grating. Broken ships, broken systems, broken women sold at auction. You are not broken. You do not know what I am. Garrett finally looked at her, really looked. In the harsh light of the engineering bay, he could see what he had missed before. The silver markings on her skin were not decorative. They were scars. Dozens of them tracing patterns that spoke of deliberate, systematic cruelty. Not the random violence of battle. Something worse. Something planned, those marks, he said quietly. Someone did that to you. My own people. She turned slightly, showing him the pattern that ran down her neck, disappearing beneath her shirt. I was High Princess of the Valanthe Ascendancy, third in line to the eternal throne. The words hung in the air between them like a bum waiting to detonate. Then my father died. My brother took power, and I became inconvenient. Garrett felt something cold settle in his chest. They tortured their own princess. They tried to break me, to make me renounce my bloodline, accept dishonor, become nothing. Her luminous gaze met his. I refused. For 4 years I refused. So they sold me to the slavers with no documentation. A princess made into garbage. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. Not pity, she would not want that, something else. The understanding of what it meant to lose everything and still keep standing. To have the universe take from you the one thing that mattered and demand you keep breathing anyway. Your brother sounds like he needs a visit from Colonial Defense. My brother commands a fleet of 3,000 warships. So that is a no then. For the first time, Sarah's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but close. You just thought about attacking an empire. I think about a lot of things, keeps me from thinking too hard about the rest. She was quiet for a moment, studying him with an intensity that made him want to look away. Then why did you truly help me, Garrett Brennan? You must want something. I want the water recycler to work. He turned back to the machinery. And I want to not eat dinner alone every night. That is about as complicated as my wants get these days. You are lying, maybe, but it is a comfortable lie. He glanced back at her. You want to help? Hand me that hydrospanner, the one with the blue grip. She stared at him, then slowly she reached for the tool and placed it in his hand. Their fingers brushed, and she did not pull away immediately. You treat me as an equal, she said. As if I am not Valanthe, as if I am not royalty. You are not royalty right now. Right now, you are crew. He went back to work. Crew helps with repairs. Crew eats together. Crew does not have to explain themselves unless they want to. And what does crew do when they cannot sleep? The question came out softer than anything she had said before. When the memories come. Garrett paused. Crew sits in the cockpit and looks at the stars. Sometimes crew talks about nothing. Sometimes crew just sits. That sounds acceptable. Tonight then, after dinner, I will show you the view from the observation deck. It is the one thing on this ship that actually works right. She nodded once, that almost smile still ghosting her features, and left as silently as she had come. That night they sat together in the darkness of the observation deck, watching distant suns burn against the void. The observation deck was not much. A small dome that protruded from the top of the ship, barely large enough for 2 people. The transparisteel was scratched and cloudy in places, starred with tiny impacts from micrometeorites. But the view was endless. Stars scattered like diamonds on black velvet. Nebula glowing in impossible colors. The vast empty spaces between where nothing existed except possibility. They did not speak. They did not need to. Some understanding had passed between them in the engineering bay. 2 wounded people floating through space, beginning to believe that hurt did not mean finished, that there were different ways to be whole. Sarah's hand rested on the console between them. At some point, without thinking, Garrett's hand moved to rest beside it. Their fingers did not touch, but they were close enough to feel each other's warmth. It was enough. For now, it was enough. The second week brought small changes. Sarah started asking questions. Simple things at first. How did the navigation system work? Why did the port engine run hotter than the starboard? What was the clicking sound in the ventilation that happened every 3 hours? Garrett answered, showed her, taught her the language of ships and systems and survival. She was brilliant. That became clear quickly. She absorbed information like she was starving for. It made connections he had not seen, suggested improvements to systems he had jury-rigged years ago and never questioned. Her hands were steady on the tools. Her mind was sharp. She also started to talk. Not much, not often. But in the quiet moments between tasks, she would offer fragments. Pieces of a life that had been systematically destroyed. My father loved poetry, she said one evening, while they were calibrating the sensor array. The old forms. Before the empire became what it is now. He would recite verses during state dinners, and my brother would mock him for it. Called him weak. Was he weak? No. Sarah's voice was certain. He was the strongest person I knew. Strong enough to be gentle. Strong enough to choose peace when war would have been easier. My brother never understood that. Garrett thought about that while they worked. About strength and gentleness. About the choice to be kind when cruelty was simpler. On the 11th day, Sarah asked about Eliza. They were in the galley preparing dinner. The same routine they had fallen into. Garrett cooked such as it was, and Sarah helped. She had learned which ration packs were least terrible, which seasonings could make protein paste almost edible, how to coax the temperamental heating unit into cooperation. You speak her name in your sleep sometimes, Sarah said. Garrett's hands stilled over the food prep. I am sorry, I should not have, no. He shook his head. It is okay. He had not talked about Eliza. Not really, not since it happened. The counselors at the discharge facility had tried. His few remaining friends had tried. But he had locked that pain away in a place where it could not touch him, could not make him feel anything except the dull ache of absence. But maybe it was time. She was 6, he said, smart, too smart sometimes. Always asking why. Why did stars burn? Why did people hurt each other? Why did some parents stay and some leave? He smiled, surprised to find he could. I did not always have good answers. What happened? We were on a colony transport, refugees from the frontier wars. I was escorting them, my last tour before discharge. Raiders hit us in the Deneb sector. Pirates. They wanted the cargo. The adults. He stopped, breathed. We tried to fight them off, but there were too many. I was in the aft section when they breached the forward hull, where the children were. Sarah's hand found his. Her cool fingers wrapped around his palm. By the time I got there, it was over. She was gone. They were all gone. And you survived. Yes, he looked at their joined hands. I survived, got out of the service, bought this ship, started fixing things because I could not fix that. They stood there in silence, her hand in his, 2 people who understood the weight of what could not be saved. I am sorry, Sarah said finally. Me too. She did not let go of his hand, neither did he. The 3rd week brought the truth. They were running a standard maintenance cycle, Garrett working on the main power coupling, while Sarah monitored the readouts. The work was familiar, comfortable. They had developed a rhythm. She would call out numbers, he would make adjustments together. They would coax the aging systems into something resembling efficiency. Garrett? Yes, the power signature just spiked in Sector 7. That should not happen during coupling replacement. He frowned, pulled himself out of the access panel. Let me see. She showed him the display. She was right. The spike was small but distinct, and it was coming from her quarters. Did you leave something running? Sarah's voice had gone cold, flat. I do not own anything that would cause that signature. They moved together through the ship, Garrett's hand automatically reaching for the plasma cutter he kept on his belt. Sarah moved like water, silent and purposeful, her earlier hesitation completely gone. This was someone else, someone trained, someone dangerous. The door to her quarters was open. Inside on the small shelf beside her cot, a device pulsed with soft blue light. Garrett recognized it immediately, a tracker beacon. Military grade. They found me, Sarah whispered. Who, my brother? She reached for the beacon, then stopped. No, if I touch it, it will transmit that I know. We have time. Maybe hours, maybe less. Garrett's mind raced through options. Dump it in an escape pod, set course for the nearest asteroid field, jump to hyperspace and hope they could not track them in the fold. Or Sarah was watching him, those sun-bright eyes, seeing too much. Or you tell me the rest, he said, everything, because if we are going to run, I need to know what we are running from. She nodded slowly. Then she sat on the cot and she told him the truth. My father was Vicente Ashwin, first emperor of the Valanthi ascendancy. For 300 years he ruled with wisdom and mercy. He believed in peace, in cooperation with other species, in building something greater than conquest. My brother Draven believed in power. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. They trembled in her lap as she spoke. When my father grew weak, Draven saw opportunity. He poisoned him, slowly, over months, made it look like natural decline. And while our father died, Draven consolidated power, eliminated rivals, placed his loyalists in key positions. How do you know? Because my father told me. In his final days, when Draven thought him too weak to speak, my father called me to his chambers. He told me everything. The poison, the conspiracy, the names of those involved. He told me to run, to hide, to survive. But you did not run. I stayed. Sarah's voice hardened. I gathered evidence, recordings, documents, testimony from servants who had seen. I thought I could expose him, thought the council would listen, thought truth mattered. They did not listen. They did listen. That was the problem. Draven could not have me speak before the council, could not have me present my evidence. So he had me arrested, declared me mentally unstable, said I was suffering delusions from grief. And then he had me taken to a place where no one would hear me scream. The scars. Yes. Sarah touched her cheekbone, traced the lightning marks. They used neural extractors, devices that can pull memories from your mind and rewrite them. They wanted me to forget, wanted me to believe their lie, that our father died of natural causes, that Draven was the rightful heir, that I was nothing. For 4 years they tried to break me. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. 4 years in a cell, 4 years of pain, 4 years of them telling me I was wrong, that my memories were false, that I was mad. But you remembered, I remembered. Her hands curled into fists. Every name, every date, every detail my father told me. I held on to it like a lifeline, refused to let them take it, refused to let them win. So they sold you. Yes, Draven could not kill me. I am his sister, royal blood. The law forbids kinslaying without formal trial before the full council. But he could declare me incompetent, strip me of title, sell me to slavers with no documentation, make me disappear until I bought you for 12 credits. Until you reminded me I was worth more than what they said. Garrett sat beside her on the cot. Outside through the hall, the tracker beacon pulsed. Time was running out. What do you want to do? Sarah turned to look at him. What do you mean we can run? I know places on the fringe where even Imperial hunters cannot reach. We can disappear, change your appearance, live quiet. She studied his face. And you would do that? Give up everything. Live in hiding, but you have done it before. After Eliza, running from one thing or another. It is not much, but it is living. Is it Sarah's hand found his again? Or is it just surviving? The question hung between them. Maybe both, Garrett admitted. I am tired of surviving, Sarah said. Tired of running, tired of letting him win. What is the alternative? I fight. She stood paced the small space. There is a law, ancient, older than Draven's rule. Kethvar, sacred challenge. Any member of the royal bloodline can invoke it. Demand trial before the full council. Once invoked, I cannot be harmed. The hunters would be bound by law to escort me safely to the homeworld. And then I speak. I tell them everything. My father's death, the torture, the evidence I carry in my mind. I force them to hear me. They will not believe you. Draven controls the council. Maybe. Sarah's eyes blazed like molten copper. But he does not control the people. The common Valanthi, the soldiers, the lower houses. They loved my father. They remember what we were before Draven's cruelty. If I can reach them, speak to them, show them what he truly is, you could start a revolution. Or die trying. She turned to face him fully. I will not ask you to come with me. This is my fight. My people. My brother. You have done more than anyone could ask. Given me shelter, safety, made me remember who I was. You owe me nothing. Garrett stood, walked to the viewport, looked out at the stars that had been his home for 3 years. When Eliza died, he said slowly, I wanted to die too. Thought about it. More than once. But I kept going because I did not know what else to do. I fixed ships because I could not fix what mattered. I helped people because I could not help her. And every day felt like walking through water. Heavy, pointless, just motion without meaning. He turned back to Sarah. And then I saw you on that platform. And something woke up. Something that remembered how to feel, how to care, how to believe that maybe wounded things could heal if you were patient enough, gentle enough. If you cared enough to treat Garen, you are crew, guys, so he said. Partners do not abandon partners. So if you are going to face your brother, challenge an empire, speak truth to power, then I am going with you. Because maybe helping you heal helped me too. And I am not done with either project yet. Sarah crossed the space between them. Her hand cupped his face, cool fingers against rough skin. You would risk everything. Already did. He covered her hand with his. Everything I had. She kissed him. It was not passionate, not yet. It was something more fragile. A question asked with lips instead of words. Can this be real? Can we be real in a universe that takes everything? Can we hold on to this? Garrett answered as gently as he could, his hands cradling her face, feeling the tears that slipped down her cheeks, warm and human, and proof that she was not shattered, not finished, just hurt, just healing. When they broke apart, she pressed her forehead to his. I am afraid, she whispered. For the first time in years, I have something to lose. Me too, he pulled her closer. But that is what makes it matter. That is what makes it worth fighting for. They stood there in the darkness, holding each other, while the tracker beacon pulsed its patient betrayal. Two scarred people who had found each other in the vast emptiness. Two people who had decided that surviving was not enough, that some things were worth the risk, that some things were worth everything. Over the next 3 days, they prepared. Sarah taught Garrett Valanthi politics, the structure of the council, the power dynamics, the ancient laws that govern the ascendancy, the one law that mattered most. Kethvar, she explained, sacred challenge. Any member of the royal bloodline can invoke it. Demand trial before the full council. Once invoked, the challenger cannot be harmed. The hunters would be bound by law to escort me safely to the homeworld. And if they ignore the law, they cannot. Sarah's voice was certain. Kethvar is older than the empire, older than the throne. It is the foundation of our entire legal system. To violate it would be to delegitimize everything. Draven's rule, his authority, everything. So you invoke it, and they have to bring you to him, yes. Into the heart of his power, yes, where he controls everything. Not everything. Her amber stare met his. He does not control the truth. He does not control what I remember. And he does not control the people, not really. They remember my father. They remember what we were. If I can speak to them, show them what Draven truly is, you could start a revolution or die trying. She took his hands. That is why I need you to understand. When I invoke Kethvar, you are free. This is my fight, my people. My brother, you do not have to come. What if I want to? Why would you want to? Because crew does not leave crew behind. He pulled her closer. Because watching you be brave makes me want to be brave too. Because for the first time in 3 years, I have a reason to fight that is not just surviving another day. She kissed him then, soft and slow and full of all the things neither of them knew how to say. On the morning of the 4th day, Sarah made her decision. Garrett woke to find her standing at the communications array, her fingers hovering over the controls. She wore one of his shirts too big for her slender frame, and her scarred skin seemed to glow in the dim light. What are you doing? What I should have done years ago. She turned to face him. I am going to challenge my brother. Sarah, hear me. She crossed to him, took his hands in hers. I have been running for 4 years, hiding, surviving, letting him win. But you reminded me who I was. A princess, a daughter of Vicente Ashwin, someone who refuses to break. You could still break. This is dangerous, I know. Her voice was steady. But hurt does not mean finished. You taught me that. And I would rather die standing than live on my knees. What happens to us, you are free. I will make sure of it. That is not what I meant. I know. She touched his face. If we survive this, I want you beside me. As partner, as equal. Not as subject or bodyguard or anything except what we are. Two people who found each other when we were lost. And if we do not survive, then we go down fighting. Together. Garrett kissed her, poured everything he felt into it. Fear and hope and the desperate belief that maybe, just maybe, they could win. Then let's do it, he said. Let's challenge an empire. Sarah smiled, fierce and bright and unbroken. The broadcast went out an hour later. Sarah stood before the communications array, her posture perfect, every centimeter a princess. She spoke in the formal Valanthi tongue, her voice carrying across the void, to every ship, every station, every homeworld in the ascendancy. Garrett could not understand the words, but he understood the power in them, the certainty, the absolute refusal to be silenced. She invoked Kethvar, named herself Sarah Ashwin, third daughter of Vicente, High Princess of the Ascendancy, demanded trial before the full council, accused her brother of murder, torture, treason. The ship was silent when she finished. Then the response came. The attack came exactly when Sarah predicted. 3 weeks of quiet had followed the broadcast. 3 weeks in which Garrett had almost believed the hunters might respect the ancient law. Almost. But Sarah knew her brother better. Draven would test the boundaries, would see if he could eliminate the threat before the trial. He would trick him up. The Eliza Dawn had docked at Helen Station for a routine supply run. Fuel cells, ration packs, replacement parts for the starboard stabilizer that had started making concerning sounds during their last jump. Standard procedure, nothing unusual. Garrett had just finished negotiating with a Tarkosian merchant, overpaid as always, but the ship needed fuel when his comm crackled to life. Garrett, Sarah's voice was calm, but he had learned to hear the tension beneath. Ships incoming, 3 vessels, Valanthi configuration. His blood went cold. Get to the cockpit, he said, already running. Prep for emergency burn. He sprinted through the crowded station corridors, shouldering past merchants and travelers, and people who had no idea the danger that was about to descend. His mind raced. 3 ships. Valanthi hunters traveled in packs of 3. Fast. Bananas. By the time he reached the docks, Sarah had the engines warming. Through the viewport, he could see them. 3 sleek cruisers, their hulls midnight black with golden spiral markings of the ascendancy, beautiful and deadly. They moved through space like predators, graceful and inevitable. Sarah sat in the pilot's seat, her hands steady on the controls. Her eyes tracked the incoming vessels with calculated precision. They found me, she said. Garrett dropped into the co-pilot seat, already running through system checks. Can we outrun them? Remember, Valanthi ships are faster, more maneuverable. They will catch us within the hour. She pulled up the navigation display, her fingers moving with absolute certainty. But we do not need to outrun them. What are you thinking, the Keth Nebula? Her voice was steady, focused. It is 2 jumps from here. Heavy radiation, sensor interference. I know it from my training. Survival training. All royalty must complete it. She glanced at him, something fierce burning in her gaze. I spent 6 months in that nebula learning to survive, learning to hide, learning every radiation corridor and asteroid field. Draven's hunters have never been there. Garrett understood immediately. Then we make them follow us blind. Yes, Sarah's hands flew over the controls, plotting the jump coordinates. I will navigate. You keep the ship running. The role reversal was complete and natural. Garrett had been teaching her the ship for 3 weeks. Now she would use it. Prep the jump drive, she said. And hold on, the first jump was rough. The Eliza Dawn shuddered as she folded space, her aging jump core protesting the sudden demand. Warning lights blazed across the console. Hull stress approaching critical. Coolant system overheating. Port stabilizer offline. Garrett's hands moved on instinct, rerouting power balancing systems, keeping the ship from tearing herself apart. Sarah navigated with absolute precision. She brought them out of the jump exactly where she intended, in the outer reaches of the Keth system. Ahead, the nebula sprawled across space like a wound, swirling clouds of ionized gas, glowing in shades of purple and crimson and sick green. Jump 2, she said. Now. The hunters were already following. Garrett could see them on sensors emerging from hyperspace, exactly where the Eliza Dawn had been seconds before. Tracking. Closing distance. The second jump was worse. The ship screamed. Every structural member groaned. The jump core temperature spiked into the red. Garrett shut down non-essential systems, diverted everything to engines and life support, and prayed to gods he did not believe in that the hull would hold. She held. She always held. They emerged inside the nebula itself. Immediately, sensors went haywire. Radiation interference turned the displays into static and chaos. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The Eliza Dawn was flying blind into a maelstrom of charged particles and gravitational eddies that could tear a ship apart. But Sarah did not hesitate. She flew by memory, by instinct, by knowledge burned into her mind during 6 months of survival training when she had been princess in air and whole. Her hands moved on the controls like she was conducting music, delicate adjustments that kept them in the narrow corridors of navigable space between the killing zones. They are still following, Garrett reported, watching the faint sensor ghosts behind them. 2 ships confirmed. The third is hanging back. They are hunting us. Sarah's voice had gone cold. Clinical. They are not trying to destroy us. They are herding us toward what the core. She pulled up a mental map, projecting it on the display. The radiation is strongest there, dense enough to cook us through the shielding. They are trying to push us into the dead zone. Garrett studied the map. Can we break the pattern? Yes. But we need to go deeper first. Make them commit. Her eyes reflected the swirling purple light of the nebula. There is an asteroid field. The drift. It runs through the nebula's heart. I used to train there. And there is a cave, large enough to hide the Eliza Dawn, shielded enough to mask our signature. She looked at him. But we have to reach it, and they will follow us every meter of the way. Then let's make sure they regret it. Sarah smiled, sharp and dangerous and alive. Hold on. She dove. The Eliza Dawn plunged deeper into the nebula, chasing corridors of navigable space that appeared on no charts and existed only in Sarah's memory. The radiation grew stronger, thick enough to see glowing clouds that painted the hull in sickly light. The ship shuddered as gravitic eddies caught her, trying to pull her into the killing zones where atoms came apart and matter ceased to exist. Sarah navigated through it all. She was magnificent. Every movement precise. Every course correction exactly what was needed. She flew like the nebula was part of her, like she could feel the radiation currents and gravitic tides in her bones. This was not the empty woman from the auction platform. This was a princess who had survived for 4 years of torture and refused to break. This was someone who knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of. Garrett kept the ship running, balanced power distribution, managed the overheating systems, rerouted coolant when the port heat exchanger failed, shut down the galley and half the life support to keep the engines alive. They worked together in perfect synchronization. She flew. He maintained. Together, they survived. Behind them, the hunters followed. They were good, professional. They had training and superior ships and the backing of an empire. But they did not have Sarah's knowledge, did not have her 6 months of learning every quirk and danger of this place. They followed the Eliza Dawn deeper and deeper, closing the distance, confident in their ability to outlast a salvage ship held together by wire and stubbornness. They were wrong. The asteroids materialized from the radiation fog like ancient stone sentinels. Massive iron cores planetoids that had never coalesced, tumbling slowly through space in a dance older than civilizations. The drift. Sarah navigated between them, threading the needle through gaps that seemed impossibly small, using the gravitational pull of the larger rocks to slingshot the ship in directions no pursuer could anticipate. One of the hunter ships tried to follow too close. Sarah saw it happening, saw the cruiser commit to a trajectory that would take it past a particularly large asteroid, saw the timing. Without hesitation, she cut the Eliza Dawn's engines, let momentum carry them behind another rock, and waited. The hunter ship passed the asteroid exactly when Sarah knew it would. Exactly when the asteroid's slow rotation brought a massive iron outcropping into the ship's path. The cruiser tried to correct. Too late. The outcropping clipped their starboard side, not enough to destroy, but enough to cripple. The ship tumbled engines, firing randomly, and disappeared into the radiation fog-trailing atmosphere. One down, Garrett said. 2 to go. Sarah was already moving again, diving toward the massive iron core rock she remembered. The one with the cave, the one where she had hidden during training when the instructors were hunting her. Where she had learned that survival was not about strength. It was about knowledge, patience, refusing to give up. There, she pointed. Garrett saw it, a dark opening in the asteroid's surface barely visible against the iron-gray stone. Big enough. Maybe. Can we fit? We are about to find out. Sarah killed the engines, let the ship drift on momentum alone, cold and dark and invisible to sensors. The Eliza Dawn glided through the vacuum, pulled by the asteroid's weak gravity, sliding toward the cave entrance like a ghost. The opening grew closer. Closer. The ship's hull cleared the edges by meters, then centimeters. Then they were inside, swallowed by darkness, the radiation fog cutting off behind them like a door closing. Sarah brought the ship to a full stop, killed all systems except life support and minimal sensors. The Eliza Dawn settled onto the cave floor with a gentle thud, and the universe went quiet. They sat in silence, breathing hard, listening. Outside, the 2 remaining hunter ships swept past, their sensors blind in the interference. Once, twice, a third time, searching, hunting, finding nothing. Then they were gone, pulling back toward the nebula's edge to wait. We are trapped, Sarah said quietly. Garrett exhaled, his hands shaking with adrenaline burn. Then we wait too, he unstrapped from the seat. Air recycler can give us 3 weeks. Food is tight, but we can stretch it. 3 weeks. She turned to look at him. And then we figure something out. He managed a tired smile. We always do. Sarah's hand caught his arm. Her grip was strong, certain. Garrett, why are you doing this truly? You could surrender me. They would let you go. You could live. No. The word came out flat. Absolute. You do not even hesitate. Because there is nothing to hesitate about. He turned to face her. 3 years ago, I lost everything that mattered. I spent every day since just existing, moving from place to place, fixing things, never stopping long enough to think. And then I found you on that platform, and something woke up. Something that still knows how to care. I am not your daughter. No, you are not. And I am not trying to replace her. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away. She did not. His fingers brushed the crystalline traces on her cheek. You are Sarah. You are Crew. And you matter. Not because of what you were or what you could be, just because you are you. Her eyes glistened like molten metal. I do not know how to be this. What you offer. My people do not form bonds this way. We calculate advantage, assess power, forge alliances through ritual and contract. Then don't be your people. He pulled her closer. Just be you. Just be here. What if I do not know who that is anymore? Then we figure it out together. She kissed him. This time it was not fragile. It was necessary. Urgent. The kiss of two people who had nearly died and wanted to feel alive. Garrett responded in kind, his arms wrapping around her, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. Her skin was warming under his touch. No longer cool and distant, but human. Real. Here. When they broke apart, she pressed her forehead to his. I am afraid, she whispered. For the first time in years, I have something to lose. Me too. He held her tighter. But that is what makes it matter. They stood there in the darkness of the asteroid cave. Two people who had lost everything holding on to each other like the universe might try to tear them apart. It probably would, but not tonight. The days blurred together in the darkness. Day 1. They inventoried supplies, rationed food, set watch schedules, even though the hunters could not detect them through the cave's natural shielding. Established routines, because humans and Valanthe both needed structure to stay sane. Day 2, Garrett taught Sarah how to repair the damage from the chase. They worked together, replacing blown relays, patching microfractures in the hull, coaxing abused systems back to something resembling function. She learned, asked questions, made observations that showed she understood the ship better than some engineers with decades of experience. Day 3. Sarah began teaching Garrett the Valanthe language. Not the formal court speech, but the common tongue. The words soldiers used, merchants, families. She spoke and he repeated his human vocal cords, struggling with sounds they were not designed to make. She found it amusing. He found her amusement worth the embarrassment. Day 4, they talked about small things, favorite foods, colors. Whether stars were more beautiful from space or from a planet's surface. Meaningless conversations that meant everything because they were choosing to share them. Day 5, Garrett woke from a nightmare. Eliza's death played out in perfect detail. Sarah found him in the cockpit, held him while he shook, and said nothing because nothing needed to be said. Day 6, Sarah spoke about the torture for the first time in detail. The neural extractors, the way they felt like fire in your skull, the voices telling her she was wrong, mad, nothing. Garrett listened and did not look away, and when she finished, he simply said, You remembered. You survived. That takes more strength than they will ever have. Day 7 through 10. The intimacy grew. Not just physical, though there was that. Hands touching while they worked. Shoulders pressed together in the narrow corridors. The way Sarah had started sleeping in Garrett's quarters instead of her own because the nightmares were worse alone. But deeper. The kind of intimacy that came from being trapped with someone and choosing to be vulnerable anyway. Sharing fears, hopes, the pieces of themselves they had locked away from everyone else. Sarah told him about her father, Vicente Ashwin, the way he would walk among the common people without guards, the way he believed power was a responsibility, not a right, the poetry he loved, the gentleness he showed even to those who tried to harm him. My brother thought it was weakness, Sarah said. They were sitting on the cave floor, backs against the ship's hull, sharing a ration pack between them. He never understood that choosing mercy when you have the power to destroy is the hardest thing in the universe. Your father sounds like he was a good man. He was. She stared at the cave ceiling, and my brother killed him for it. Garrett told her about Eliza. Really told her. Not just the facts of her death, but the memories of her life. The way she would wake him up before dawn to watch meteor showers. The elaborate stories she would invent about the stars. The questions that had no answers but deserved to be asked anyway. She wanted to be an explorer, he said, wanted to see every planet, meet every species. She believed the universe was fundamentally good, that if you were brave enough and kind enough, everything would work out. And then she learned it was not, Sarah said softly. And then she never got the chance to learn anything else. They sat in silence for a long time. I wish I could have met her, Sarah said finally. I wish you could have too. She would have liked you, day 11. Garrett woke to find Sarah standing at the cave entrance, staring out at the swirling radiation fog. He came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and she leaned back into him. What are you thinking about whether courage is choosing to fight or choosing to run? What do you think? I think courage is choosing what you can live with after. She turned in his arms. I do not want to run anymore, Garrett. I do not want to hide. I want to stand. I want to speak. I want to fight. Even if it kills you, especially then. Some things are worth more than survival. He knew she was right, had known it since the moment they fled into the nebula. This could not last. 3 weeks would end. The hunters would not give up. Draven would not stop hunting. Eventually they would be found. Eventually they would have to choose. Run forever or stand once. Day 12 through 15. They prepared. Sarah taught Garrett Valanthi politics, the structure of the council, the power dynamics, the ancient laws that govern the ascendancy, the one law that mattered most. She repeated the details of Kethvar, making sure he understood, making sure he knew what they were walking into. The journey to the Valanthi homeworld would take 6 days. 6 days in which Sarah would need to prepare her case, gather her evidence. Such as it was, she had no recordings, no documents, just her memories and her scars and her absolute certainty about what her brother had done. It will not be enough, Garrett said. It will have to be. She was working on the communications array, preparing it for the broadcast. My brother made one mistake. He should have killed me, should have violated the law and dealt with the consequences. But he thought he had broken me, thought he had destroyed the evidence. He was wrong. Day 16, they made plans. Sarah would broadcast the challenge on all Valanthi frequencies, invoke Kethvar in the formal language, name her bloodline and demand her right to trial. The hunters would have no choice but to respond. She practiced the words. Over and over. Garrett could not understand the language, but he understood the power in her voice, the certainty, the absolute refusal to be silenced. Day 17. Sarah made her decision. Garrett woke to find her standing at the communications array, her fingers hovering over the controls. She wore one of his shirts too big for her slender frame, and her lightning-marked skin seemed to glow in the dim light. It is time, she said. Are you ready, Ko? She turned to face him. I am terrified, but terror is not the same as cowardice. He crossed to her, took her hands. Then let's do this together. The broadcast went out an hour later. Sarah stood before the communications array, her posture perfect, every centimeter a princess. She spoke in the formal Valanthi tongue, her voice carrying across the void to every ship, every station, every homeworld in the ascendancy. Garrett could not understand the words, but he understood the power in them, the certainty, the absolute refusal to be silenced. She invoked Kethvar, named herself Sarah Ashwin, third daughter of Vicente, High Princess of the Ascendancy, demanded trial before the full council, accused her brother of murder, torture, treason. The cave was silent when she finished. Then the response came. The hunter ships responded immediately, not with weapons, with a formal acknowledgement. The right had been invoked. They were bound by law older than their oaths to Draven, bound to escort her safely, bound to bring her home. 6 days, Sarah said. 6 days to the homeworld. 6 days to prepare. 6 days to either save an empire or die trying. She turned to Garrett. Are you ready? No. He took her hand, but let's go anyway. They left the cave together, two scarred people who had decided that wounded was not the same as finished, that some fights were worth taking even when the odds were impossible, that everything you had could buy more than freedom. It could buy hope, and hope they were about to learn was the most dangerous weapon in the universe. The journey to the Valanthi homeworld took 6 days. 6 days escorted by the hunter ships that had tried to kill them. 6 days flying through ascendancy space under the protection of a law so ancient that even tyrants feared to break it. 6 days in which Sarah transformed from survivor to revolutionary. The Eliza Dawn traveled at the center of a 3-ship formation. The remaining hunter cruisers flanked her port in starboard, sleek and deadly, their weapons powered down but ready. A strange convoy, predators forced by law to guard their prey. Garrett kept the ship running, managing the systems that protested the sustained speed. Sarah spent every waking hour preparing. She started with the lower houses. On the second day, she made her first encrypted broadcast, not to the council, not to the nobility, to the soldiers, the mechanics, the merchants and farmers and common Valanthi who remembered Vicente Ashwin's rule and wondered what had happened to the empire they loved. "My name is Sarah Ashwin," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I am the daughter of Vicente, your emperor, the one my brother murdered." Garrett watched from the cockpit as she spoke. She stood before the communications array like she was addressing millions, which she was. Every word measured, every phrase calculated for maximum impact. This was not the hollow woman from the auction platform. This was a princess who knew exactly how dangerous words could be. "For 4 years I've been silent," she continued. "Imprisoned, tortured, sold like cargo. My brother tried to erase me, tried to make me forget what he did, what he is. But I remember everything, every name, every crime, every betrayal. And now I am coming home to speak the truth." The responses started within hours. Encrypted messages from soldiers stationed on distant outposts, from factory workers on industrial moons, from families who had lost loved ones to Draven's purges and never understood why. They flooded in. Hundreds, then thousands. Messages of support, of hope, of rage at what had been done to Vicente's daughter. Sarah read every one, responded when she could, built connections, reminded them that they had power, that their voices mattered, that revolution started not with weapons but with the choice to stop being silent. On the third day, she made contact with the swing voters on the council. There were 3: Captain Theron, commander of the home fleet; Administrator Chiral, who controlled the industrial sectors; Scholar Varen, keeper of the ancient archives. None were loyal to Draven. None had openly opposed him. They were survivors who had learned to bend without breaking. Sarah did not ask for their support. She simply told them the truth, recited her father's final words, described the torture in clinical detail, explained that she was coming not for revenge, but for justice, for reform, for the empire her father had envisioned. She gave them a choice: stand with honor or live with shame. On the 4th day, Draven responded. His broadcast was short, efficient, full of lies delivered with absolute confidence. "My sister suffers from delusions brought on by grief," he said, his voice smooth as poison. "I have tried for years to help her, provided the best care, but her mind broke under the weight of our father's death. Now she spreads falsehoods, accuses me of crimes I would never commit. It pains me to see her like this." Sarah watched the broadcast with Garrett beside her. Her face was carved from stone. Her eyes burned like forge fires. "He is good at this," she said quietly. "Lying, making people doubt their own eyes. 4 years he made me doubt myself. But you did not break." "No." She turned to him. "And I will not break now. Let him lie. Truth does not need to be louder than lies. It just needs to be undeniable." On the 5th day, Sarah taught Garrett the protocol he would need to survive in the Crystal Palace. They sat together in the crew quarters, the space feeling smaller now that they had shared so much within it. She explained the formal greetings, the ritual responses, the complex hierarchy of the court. Who could be trusted? Who would sell them out for advancement? "You will be watched," she said. "Every moment. They will test you, try to separate us, make you doubt. I will not doubt. They will offer you money, position, safe passage home if you abandon me. I will not abandon you. Sarah touched his face, her cool fingers tracing the lines of worry around his eyes. I know, but I need you to understand what we are walking into. Draven has spent 4 years consolidating power. He controls the guards, most of the council, the propaganda networks. We have truth and hope and very little else. Sometimes that is enough. She smiled, sad and beautiful. You still believe that I believe in you. He caught her hand, pressed it to his chest. I have seen what you survived, what you refused to become. If anyone can change an empire with nothing but words, it is you. They made love that night with desperate gentleness. Two people holding on to each other against the coming storm. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her silver scars gleaming in the dim light, and spoke of futures they might never see. If we win, Sarah whispered, what will you do? Stay with you. If you will have me. I am Valanthe. You are human. My people are going to adapt. He pulled her closer. Besides, I have become very attached to this particular Valanthe. Might have something to do with buying her for 12 credits. Investment and all that? She laughed. Actual laughter, soft and real and precious. You are impossible. So I have been told. On the 6th day they saw the homeworld. It appeared on the view screen like a jewel against the void. Crystal spires rose from continents of silver seas, catching the light of twin suns and scattering it in rainbow patterns that hurt to look at directly. Cities that hummed with harmonic resonance, their frequencies audible even through the vacuum. Beauty on a scale that made human achievements look like children's toys. This was the heart of the ascendancy. 3,000 years of civilization, power enough to reshape solar systems. And somewhere down there in a palace made of singing crystal, Draven waited. It is beautiful, Garrett said. It used to be more beautiful. Sarah's voice was soft. Before Draven, before the fear. My father believed beauty required freedom, that art and music and poetry mattered as much as ships and weapons. He opened the archives to everyone, commissioned works from alien species, believed culture was stronger than conquest. What happened? Draven closed it all, said it made us weak, focused everything on military expansion, control. He turned the most beautiful civilization in the galaxy into a prison. We are going to open it again. She looked at him, believed him, together. The Elizadon descended through the atmosphere escorted by the hunter ships. They landed at the Council Plaza, a vast expanse of crystal that rang like a bell when the ship's landing gear touched down. Beyond the palace rose in impossible spirals, each tower singing a different note in an eternal chord. Thousands of Valanthe filled the plaza. They had come to see the lost princess, the one who had invoked Kethvar, the one who challenged the emperor himself. They stood in absolute silence, watching as the Elizadon's hatch opened. Sarah emerged first. She wore simple clothes, no royal regalia, no symbols of power, just the silver scars that marked her skin and the absolute certainty in her posture. She stood on the ramp of the salvage ship, tall and unbroken and magnificent, and looked at her people. Garrett emerged behind her, close enough to matter, far enough to show this was her moment. He wore his old colonial defense jacket, the only formal clothing he owned, and kept his hand near the plasma cutter on his belt. Captain Theron waited at the base of the ramp, the commander of the home fleet, one of the swing voters. He wore full ceremonial armor, every plate polished to mirror brightness, and his face was unreadable. High Princess Sarah Ashwin, he said formally. You have invoked Kethvar, sacred challenge. The council convenes at dawn. Until then, you are under protection of the ancient law. No harm may come to you. I understand. Sarah's voice carried across the silent plaza. Thank you, Captain. Something flickered in Theron's eyes. Recognition, perhaps. Or hope. He bowed formal and precise and gestured toward the palace. The walk across the plaza was the longest of Garrett's life. Thousands of eyes watched them. Valanthe of every station, nobles in fine clothes, soldiers in combat armor. Common workers still wearing the marks of their trades. They stared at Sarah, at her scars, at the human walking beside her, at the impossible sight of a princess who had been erased returning from death. No one spoke, but Garrett could feel the tension, the anticipation, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, something was about to change. The palace interior was even more stunning than the exterior. Halls of crystal that sang when you walked through them, ceilings that showed the stars even in daylight, gardens that grew plants from 100 worlds all thriving in perfect harmony, beauty and power woven together into something transcendent. Draven had done this, Garrett realized. Had lived in this palace for 4 years while his sister rotted in a cell, had walked these beautiful halls and never once felt shame. They were given quarters in the guest wing, luxurious by any standard. A suite larger than the entire Eliza Dawn, with windows that looked out over the Crystal City. Guards were posted outside. For protection, Theron said. But Garrett knew they were also watchers, making sure Sarah did not run, did not try to gather weapons, did not do anything except wait for the trial. Sarah stood at the window looking out at the city of her birth, the place where her father had ruled, where her brother had destroyed her, where tomorrow she would speak truth or die trying. Garrett came up behind her. Are you ready now? She leaned back against him. I am terrified. My mind keeps showing me everything that could go wrong. Draven could have the council in his pocket, could have planned for this, could have traps I cannot see. But you are going to do it anyway. Yes, because terror is not the same as cowardice. She turned in his arms. Because you taught me that wounded does not mean finished. That some things are worth fighting for even when the odds are impossible. I did not teach you that. You already knew it. I just reminded you. Then thank you for the reminder. She kissed him softly. Whatever happens tomorrow, know that you gave me something I thought I had lost forever. What? The belief that I was worth saving. They held each other while the twin suns set over the Crystal City, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Tomorrow would bring truth or death or something in between. But tonight they had this, each other. The understanding that they had chosen to fight instead of run, that sometimes everything you had could change the universe. Dawn came too soon. The council chamber was a vast dome of crystal that amplified every sound, every word, until it echoed like thunder. 12 seats arranged in a circle, one for each captain, one for the emperor. In the center, a platform where the accused would stand. Thousands more watched from galleries above, packed shoulder to shoulder. Every seat filled, every eye fixed on the chamber floor. Sarah walked to the center platform alone. Garrett wanted to go with her, but this was her fight, her moment. He stood at the edge of the chamber with the other observers, hands clenched, and watched the woman he loved face down an empire. Draven sat in the emperor's seat. He looked nothing like Sarah. Where she was tall and elegant, he was broad and powerful. Where her eyes were amber, his were black as void. Where she carried scars, he wore perfection. He smiled as she took her position, a smile full of confidence and contempt. High Princess Sarah Ashwin, the council speaker, announced, "You have invoked Kethvar, accused Emperor Draven of crimes against the throne. State your case." Sarah stood straight. Her voice when she spoke carried to every corner of the vast chamber. Clear and strong and absolutely certain. My father, Vicente Ashwin, was murdered by his son, poisoned over months to make his death appear natural. I know this because my father told me in his final hours, told me the names of the conspirators, the method, the timeline, everything. Lies, Draven said calmly, grief-induced delusions from a broken mind. Sarah ignored him. She recited the conspiracy, every name, every detail. The poison used, where it was obtained, who administered it, the sequence of symptoms, the timing. She spoke for an hour without pause, without hesitation, without a single contradiction. The council listened in growing horror, because it was too detailed to be invention, too precise to be madness. And everyone in that chamber had watched Vicente decline in exactly the way Sarah described. When I tried to present this evidence 4 years ago, Sarah continued, my brother had me arrested, declared me mentally unstable, had me taken to a facility in the outer territories where no one would hear what I had to say. She pulled down the collar of her shirt, exposing the silver scars on her neck, on her shoulders. The deliberate patterns of torture. For 4 years, neural extractors were used on my mind, devices that pull memories and rewrite them. They wanted me to forget, to accept the lie, to become nothing. She looked directly at Draven. I refused. For 4 years, I refused. So my brother sold me to slavers. with no documentation, no identity, tried to erase me completely. The chamber was silent. She is mad, Draven said. These are fantasies, inventions of a diseased mind. Then explain the scars, Sarah said. Explain how I knew details of our father's death that were never made public. Explain why you never formally denounced me before the council as required by law. You imprisoned me, tortured me, sold me. But you never completed the ritual. Why Brother Draven's smile faltered? Because you were afraid, Sarah answered her own question. Afraid of what I would say. Afraid that if you brought me before the council, the truth would come out. So you tried to break me instead. Tried to make me forget. Tried to make me nothing. She turned to address the entire chamber. But I am not nothing. I am Sarah Ashwin, daughter of Vicente, and I remember everything. The second day of trial, Sarah called witnesses. Not the nobles, not the generals, the servants, the guards who had been stationed outside Vicente's chambers, the medical staff who had treated him, the maintenance workers who had seen things they were not supposed to see. One by one they came forward, spoke of strange visitors to Vicente's quarters, of orders to destroy medical records, of guards who asked questions and disappeared, of a climate of fear that descended over the palace after Vicente's death. Draven's defense crumbled piece by piece. He tried to discredit the witnesses, called them liars, claimed they were paid by Sarah to give false testimony. But there were too many, too consistent, too detailed. By evening, even Draven's supporters looked uncertain. On the third day, something changed. Sarah was presenting witness testimony when she felt it, a tingling at the base of her skull. The suppression cuffs had been removed weeks ago, but the neural damage from 4 years of torture had left her psionic abilities dormant. Until now, she could feel the council members' emotions. Theron's hope, Kiral's uncertainty, Draven's seething rage masked by calm, and she could feel something else. A plan. Draven was going to the explosion rock the chamber. Draven had planted charges, a final attempt to eliminate her and blame it on extremists. But Sarah's newly awakened abilities had given her seconds of warning, enough time to shout everyone down. Captain Theron all moved on instinct, throwing himself between Sarah and the blast. The shields held, barely. When the smoke cleared, Draven stood exposed, the detonator still in his hand. The entire chamber had seen it. Attempted murder before the council, Theron said quietly, his weapon drawn. The final crime. Guards, Draven shouted, his composure finally cracking. Remove her from this chamber. She has said enough. Silence. The guards did not move. I gave you an order. Captain Theron stepped forward, his hand on his weapon. Not drawn, just resting there. A statement. We swore oath to the eternal line, Your Majesty. His voice carried through the chamber. High Princess Shura carries that line in her blood. You have not. Not since you murdered Vicente Ashwin. The chamber erupted. Other guards moved to flank Theron, then more. Within moments, half the guards in the chamber had shifted position, placing themselves between Draven and Sarah, making their choice clear. Draven reached for his own weapon. You dare, Sarah's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. I dare. And so do they. And so will others. Because you tried to erase the truth, brother. But truth does not disappear just because you burn the evidence. She walked toward him. Garrett moved to follow, but Theron held up a hand. This was Sarah's moment. You tried to erase me, she said, stopping directly in front of Draven. Tried to make me forget who I was, what I knew. You failed. I am here, unbroken. And I am giving you one chance you never gave our father, one chance you never gave me. What chance? Choose to change? Accept the reforms. Step down from absolute power. Help build something better. Or be remembered as the tyrant who destroyed everything our father built. Draven stared at her with absolute hatred. And if I refuse, then you prove you were never worthy of the throne in the first place. Sarah made her final argument. She did not ask for Draven's execution, did not demand the throne. Instead, she spoke of the empire her father had envisioned, of the ascendancy that could be. My father believed we could be more than conquerors, she said, believed we could build something greater than fear. He opened our borders, shared our knowledge, treated other species as equals rather than subjects. And for 300 years, the ascendancy prospered. Then my brother took power, closed the borders, hoarded knowledge, ruled through terror and purges. She gestured to the vast chamber. Look around you. Look at this beauty we have created. Now ask yourselves, what have we built in the last 4 years? What have we created except weapons and prisons and fear? The council was silent. I do not want your throne, Sarah said. I want your promise. End the trafficking of our people. Open dialogue with other species. Give the council real power instead of making them figureheads. Build justice systems independent of royal authority. Reform the ascendancy into something our father would recognize, something worthy of our ancestors. And if we refuse, the eldest council member asked. Sarah's eyes blazed like molten copper. Then I will return, and I will not ask nicely again. The vote came at sunset. The council convened in closed session, deliberated for hours while Sarah and Garrett waited in the guest quarters, while the city held its breath, while the entire ascendancy wondered if truth still mattered in a universe built on power. When the doors opened, Captain Theron emerged. He bowed to Sarah, formal and deep. The council has voted, he said. Emperor Draven is stripped of absolute authority. The reforms you proposed will be implemented. A transition council will govern during the restructuring. You are invited to serve on that council. And my brother exiled to the outer territories, under guard. He will live, but he will never hold power again. Sarah nodded slowly. Then justice is served. There is one more matter. Theron's expression was unreadable. The council has voted to offer you the throne. The eternal line passes to you by right of birth. You would be empress. The chamber fell silent. Garrett's heart stopped. Sarah looked at the captain, at the council members watching from the doorway, at the city beyond the crystal walls, at all the power and beauty and responsibility being offered. Then she looked at Garrett. I refuse, she said. The shock rippled through everyone present. I do not want to rule, Sarah continued. I want to serve. I will join the transition council. I will help reform our systems. I will ensure my father's vision is realized. But I will not sit on the throne. Power concentrated in one person is what allowed my brother to commit his crimes. We need something different, something better. She turned to the council. Governance by consensus, by merit, by the will of the people we serve. That is what my father wanted. That is what I will fight for. And then I built a life, my own life, with the person who reminded me I was worth saving. The guards escorted Draven from the chamber in silence. He did not struggle, did not speak. His black eyes met Sarah's one final time as they led him away. She saw no remorse there, only hatred. But she also saw defeat. Her brother was gone. The first council session happened 3 days later. Sarah sat not at the head of the table, but as one among equals. They debated for hours, argued, compromised. It was messy and frustrating, and exactly what democracy should be. Your father would be proud, Kyrell told her afterward. Our father, Sarah corrected. This is all of ours now. The first month brought visible changes. The trafficking rings were dismantled. Political prisoners released. The borders opened to human ships for the first time in 4 years. Garrett watched Sarah work 18-hour days drafting legislation, meeting with constituents, building the empire her father had dreamed of. You could have had absolute power, he said one night, as she collapsed beside him on the Elizadon's cot. Would have been easier. Easier is not always better, she murmured, already half asleep. You taught me that. Months later, the Elizadon still sat in the plaza, a strange little salvage ship among crystal palaces. Garrett had been offered wealth, position, a place among the Ascendancy's elite. He had turned it all down. I fix things, he had said. There is always something that needs fixing. The reforms were happening, slowly, with resistance and setbacks and victories and compromises. Sarah worked with the Transition Council drafting new laws, opening channels with other species, dismantling the apparatus of fear Draven had built. Garrett helped, in his own way, fix the infrastructure that had been neglected, taught human engineering techniques to Valanthi students, built bridges between worlds through the simple act of making things work. They lived on the ship. Sarah refused the palace quarters, said she had spent enough time in Crystal Towers. The Elizadon was home, small and cluttered and real. One evening they stood in the observation dome watching the twin suns set over the Crystal City. You could have ruled, Garrett said. I could have, Sarah leaned against him. But that was never what I wanted. What did you want to matter? To make something better? To find someone who saw me as more than my blood or my title? She turned to face him. I found that on a salvage ship, from a man who paid 12 credits for a princess. 12 credits was all I had. It was everything. She smiled bright and genuine and free. Stay with me, Garrett Brennan. Not as subject, not as bodyguard, as my partner, as my equal. I am human. Your people will talk. Let them talk. Let the whole galaxy talk. She kissed him soft and certain. I was worth a planet. You reminded me I was worth my own choices. And I choose this. I choose you. I choose to build something new. The city sang its harmonic chord around them. The empire was changing, slowly, imperfectly, but changing. And in the observation dome of a salvaged ship, two people who had been scarred learned what it meant to be whole. Not through power, not through conquest, but through the simple choice to see each other, to value each other, to believe that everything you had could buy more than freedom. It could buy hope, and hope they had learned was worth everything.